outdated. After everything I had done for this company, I stared at Nathan in disbelief, my voice barely audible in the suddenly silent conference room. "It's nothing personal, Diane," Nathan said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "We need fresh perspectives. New blood. The tech industry is evolving, and we need to evolve with it." 20 pairs of eyes watched the exchange. My colleagues, people I had worked alongside for years, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few looked down at their notepads, avoiding the spectacle altogether. Nathan adjusted his cufflinks, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "HR has your severance package ready," he continued smoothly. "We'll need your security badge and laptop before you leave the building." The humiliation burned through me. 22 years at Brightcore Solutions, wiped away in a 5-minute speech at our monthly staff meeting. I took a deep breath, rose from my chair, and nodded. "I wish you all the best," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I gathered my notepad and pen, the only personal items I had brought, and walked out without another word. My name is Diane Shaw, 57 years old. Until 10 minutes ago, I was the Systems Integration Manager at Brightcore Solutions, one of the largest software development firms in Austin, Texas. I started as a junior programmer at 35 and worked my way up, learning every corner of our systems, both the ones on paper and the invisible threads that kept everything running smoothly. For over 2 decades, I was the person everyone called when things went wrong, the one who stayed late debugging a tricky piece of code, who knew which clients needed extra hand-holding, who remembered that the international rollout needed special configuration, or we'd be dealing with a flood of customer complaints. I built workarounds and fixes that weren't in any manual because they had to be done on the fly to keep the company afloat. And now Nathan Carter, the new Chief Technology Officer, here all of 8 months, had decided I was obsolete. As I cleaned out my desk, my phone buzzed with messages from coworkers, shock, sympathy, disbelief. I appreciated it, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. I boxed up 22 years of personal items in under half an hour. A few photos, some service awards, a coffee mug from my daughter Emily. On my way out, I passed Rachel from finance. She gave me a quick hug and whispered, "This is insane. You know the new project management software they're rolling out next week? No one knows how it connects to our billing system." I smiled faintly. "I'm sure they'll figure it out." But as I handed over my badge at the front desk and walked to my car, a cold realization settled in my gut. They wouldn't figure it out. I was the only one who truly understood how tightly woven our systems were, and they had just pushed me out the door. My relationship with Brightcore had begun when Emily was only 5. As a single mother with an associate's degree, I was grateful for a steady job and dove into learning everything I could. The early years were a balancing act: daycare pickups, late-night bug fixes, client demos squeezed between pediatric appointments. I missed school plays and parent-teacher conferences because of product launches. I postponed vacations when we were on deadline. I even missed my mother's 75th birthday because a major client was visiting from London. Brightcore had become my second home. My colleagues were like a family. And Robert, the previous CTO who retired last year, had seen my dedication. "You're the glue holding this place together, Diane," he used to say. But under Nathan's leadership, things had shifted. He came from a flashy Silicon Valley startup, all about disruption and automation. At first, I welcomed his energy. Some processes needed modernizing, but when I raised concerns, they were brushed aside. When he started giving major projects to younger staff with less experience, but fancier degrees, I tried not to take it personally. And yet, here I was, out the door. As I sat in my car, the first tears pricking my eyes, my phone buzzed. It was Emily, now 29 and living in Denver. "Mom, maybe this is your moment to do something new. You've given them everything." Her words echoed in my mind as I drove home. I wasn't ready to decide my future that night. But one thing was clear: Brightcore had made a mistake they were going to regret, and I was done giving away my expertise for free. Commitment to Brightcore. You're the backbone of this place, Diane, Robert would often tell me. Under his guidance, I earned 3 promotions, eventually managing all of our integration systems. Robert understood something Nathan never did. My worth wasn't just in my daily tasks, it was in the deep, hard-earned knowledge that couldn't be captured in a policy manual or software guide. I tried, honestly, to document the processes I built. Every January, I made a resolution to get everything written down, but the emergencies never stopped. A major vendor would go under, a critical software patch would fail, or a key client would demand an urgent customization. The documentation always stayed half-finished, mostly stored in my head. When Nathan Carter stepped into the CTO role 6 months ago, replacing Robert, I had my doubts, but gave him the benefit of the doubt. He had an impressive background at a trendy Silicon Valley startup, and he was all about buzzwords like efficiency and automation. At first, I welcomed some of his ideas. Honestly, Brightcore had let a few inefficiencies slide, and a fresh set of eyes seemed promising. I did my best to explain how our systems intertwined, the delicate fixes, the invisible connections that held the whole operation together. But Nathan wasn't interested in listening. We need to cut the tribal knowledge, he'd say dismissively, brushing off my concerns. We're here to upgrade, not cling to the past. When he rolled out plans for a new project management platform, I flagged potential risks. We'll end up with gaps between our billing and client support systems, I warned. Trust me, Nathan had said smoothly. It's going to revolutionize the way we work. Soon after, I noticed the shift. My input was left off meeting agendas. Younger staff with shiny master's degrees and little hands-on experience were assigned key projects. My suggestions, when I managed to voice them, were waved aside or outright ignored. Even then, I never dreamed they'd fire me. 3 days after I was shown the door, the shock hadn't worn off. I poured myself into updating my resume, though it felt bizarre distilling over 2 decades of experience into a handful of bullet points. Emily, now 29 and thriving in Denver, called every day. Mom, maybe it's time for a fresh start, she said cheerfully. You've given Austin everything. Maybe this is your cue to come west. I've already found a few apartments for you to check out. Her optimism lifted my spirits, but I wasn't ready to leap just yet. I needed to wrap my head around what had happened. That morning, I met Rachel from finance for coffee. She looked exhausted, rubbing her eyes as she stirred her cappuccino. It's been a nightmare, she admitted. They launched the new software yesterday, and it's a mess. Orders aren't processing, client data is disappearing, and no one can figure out why half the accounts are getting locked. I tried to keep my face neutral. There are always bumps in the road with new systems. Rachel shook her head. This isn't a bump, Diane. It's a disaster. And Nathan, he's blaming you. He's telling the executive team you deliberately set traps in the system before you left. I almost dropped my coffee. What? That's outrageous. I would never sabotage the company. We know that, Rachel said quietly. But Nathan's scrambling for someone to blame. Driving home, the shock turned into a cold fury. After everything I had sacrificed for Brightcore, Nathan was not only pushing me out, but was now tarnishing my reputation. It was more than unfair, it was a threat to my career and name. I clenched the steering wheel tighter as the city blurred by. Nathan had underestimated me. And for the first time in weeks, a flicker of determination sparked inside. If Brightcore wanted to fix this mess, they were going to need me. But this time, it would be on my terms. The blow to my reputation felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just unfair, it had the power to shadow my entire career if the rumors spread. As I sat on my couch, still trying to collect myself, my phone rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but I forced my voice into a professional tone as I answered, Diane Shaw speaking. Diane, thank goodness, came the unmistakable voice of Mark Bennett, Brightcore's CEO. The tension in his voice was impossible to miss. I stayed quiet, waiting. I'll be straight with you, Mark said after a shaky breath. The new system rollout is a disaster. Orders are backed up, Billing errors are piling up, and 3 of our biggest accounts are threatening to walk away. We can't get this under control. He hesitated. We need you back. I gripped the phone tighter. Mark, Nathan just fired me, and now he's telling people I sabotaged the implementation. Nathan has no idea what he's talking about, Mark said, frustration crackling in his voice. None of us realized just how essential you were until now. Honestly, we took you for granted. The recognition I'd craved for years had finally arrived, but only after everything had unraveled. A part of me wanted to let them flounder, to sit back and watch the mess unfold. But another part, the one that had spent decades investing in this company, winced at the idea of seeing all that hard work collapse. Diane, Mark's voice softened, almost pleading, come back as a consultant. We'll triple your previous salary. Please help us fix this. I sat quietly, staring at the wall, a storm of mixed emotions rushing through me. They needed me now, but where was this respect when it would have mattered most? After a sleepless night weighing the offer, I called Mark the next morning. I agreed, but on my terms. I would work remotely, control my schedule, and the contract would include a non-disparagement clause addressing Nathan's false claims. Mark accepted without hesitation, desperation clear in his voice. Logging into Brightcore's systems from my home office felt surreal. The dashboards, reports, and interfaces were all so familiar, but I was no longer an employee. I was the fixer they'd called in to clean up their own mess. It didn't take long to uncover the root of the problems. The new software hadn't been integrated with our billing systems, just as I'd warned. On top of that, several critical client-specific customizations I'd designed over the years had been ignored during the transition. The system was trying to force one-size-fits-all solutions on customers with unique requirements. I got to work, documenting each issue and drafting clear, step-by-step guidance for the IT team. By the end of the day, the worst of the crisis had been contained, and the backlog of orders started moving again. I emailed a detailed report to Mark and the key executives, intentionally leaving Nathan off the list. The next morning, my inbox lit up with messages from Mark and several grateful department heads. The only note from Nathan was a terse, "Please copy me on all communications going forward." I replied with polite professionalism, attaching my report. Less than an hour later, Nathan scheduled an emergency video meeting with me and the IT team. When his face appeared on my screen, it was tight with controlled irritation. "Diane, while we do appreciate your help with the immediate issues," he began coolly, "we need to talk about your methods. Some of your solutions seem to be pulling us backward, relying on old systems rather than leveraging the new platform's capabilities." I kept my expression neutral, but inside, I braced myself. Nathan wasn't done trying to reassert control, and I wasn't done standing my ground. My previous access had been reactivated, and no one had thought to adjust the permissions. Sitting in my home office in Austin, I took a slow breath as I clicked into the admin portal. The security logs displayed a detailed record of every swipe, every entry, every late-night visit. I carefully scrolled to the night before my dismissal. My heart rate spiked as I saw the entry. Nathan Carter's badge had been used to enter the server room at 11:42 p.m. Nathan, the CTO who barely understood the technical backbone of the company, had been in the most sensitive part of the building long after hours, just before the system began to unravel. Why would Nathan even need to be in there? I clicked further, examining the system logs. The digital breadcrumbs led straight to a series of configuration changes. They were subtle, buried in lines of code, but they had introduced the exact conditions that caused the catastrophic failures once the new software launched. A cold knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't incompetence or bad luck. This was deliberate. Nathan had sabotaged Brightcore's systems. I leaned back in my chair, hands gripping the armrests, as realization settled over me. Nathan hadn't fired me because I was resistant to change. He'd pushed me out because I was the only one who could detect his scheme. But why? I dug deeper, pulling public records and professional profiles. Nathan had come from a rival tech firm, NovaEdge, one of Brightcore's most aggressive competitors. On the surface, his transition to Brightcore looked legitimate, but digging through his LinkedIn history, I found that he still held stock options in NovaEdge. My chest tightened. If Brightcore lost its top-tier clients and its reputation plummeted, NovaEdge would be perfectly positioned to sweep in and claim those accounts. And Nathan's holdings in NovaEdge? They'd soar in value. I knew I couldn't go to Mark empty-handed. Nathan still had allies in the executive team, and without airtight proof, I could easily be dismissed as a bitter former employee trying to stir up trouble. I needed a plan. The next morning, I called Rachel in finance. "Hey, quick question," I said casually. "With all the workflow changes, I want to make sure we're aligned on when certain tasks are getting done. Can you send me the time logs for the past week?" Rachel, already overwhelmed, didn't ask questions. Within the hour, I had the full dataset showing Nathan's after-hours activity. Now came the tricky part, watching and waiting. The next phase of system integration was scheduled for Friday night. If Nathan followed his pattern, he'd strike again soon. I set up a monitoring protocol from my end, nothing flashy, just a quiet alert system that would ping my phone if any unexpected code changes were made. By Friday evening, the alert lit up. Nathan was back in the system, manipulating core files in real time. Without hesitation, I called Mark. "You need to come to the office. Right now. And bring security." Mark's voice was tight. "What's going on?" "I have evidence Nathan's tampering with the system as we speak," I told him calmly. "I'm sending you the live security feed. You'll want to see this yourself." Moments later, I texted Rachel. "Can you make sure Nathan stays in the building until Mark arrives? Say there's a finance issue that needs his input." An hour later, Mark called. "Diane, we've got him." Security walked him out. "The police are on their way." I don't know what to say except, "Thank you." I exhaled, sinking deeper into my chair, the weight of weeks lifting off my shoulders. This wasn't over. But for the first time, I was no longer the company's forgotten fixer. I was the one who had saved Brightcore, and I wasn't about to let anyone forget it. A clear letter of instruction on when to release it. Sitting alone in my kitchen in Austin, I stared at the glowing laptop screen, the weight of what I had uncovered pressing on my chest. The night before my termination, Nathan Carter had been in the Brightcore headquarters until nearly midnight, strange behavior for a CTO known for ducking out before dinner. Even more telling, his badge had been used to unlock the server room just minutes before a cascade of changes rippled through our core systems. Nathan wasn't a hands-on technical lead, he was all strategy and optics. So why had he gone into the most sensitive tech environment in the building? I sifted deeper through the access reports and system events. What I found made the hair on my arms rise. Hidden in the routine logs were tiny but damaging alterations, tweaks that, under pressure, would send the newly implemented software crashing. Nothing that would be noticed in a test environment, but in live conditions, it was a disaster waiting to unfold. I pushed away from the table, my heart racing. This hadn't been negligence. It was a calculated takedown. Why? As I connected the dots over the next 2 days, a grim picture came into focus. Before landing the Brightcore job, Nathan had worked at NovaEdge Technologies, our fiercest competitor. His professional profiles glossed over the connection, but public filings told a different story. He still held significant stock options in NovaEdge, options that would skyrocket in value if Brightcore stumbled and lost its top clients. My breath caught as I pulled up internal emails using my reactivated credentials. There, in black and white, were Nathan's private messages to Brightcore's biggest accounts, subtly urging them to consider NovaEdge in light of the recent instability at Brightcore. In one particularly bold email, he even praised NovaEdge's impeccable track record and superior support. I leaned back in my chair, mind spinning. Nathan hadn't ousted me because I was old-fashioned. He'd eliminated the one person who could uncover his scheme before it reached critical mass. But now I had him. Still, I understood the stakes. Nathan remained powerful inside Brightcore's executive circle. Without airtight proof, If I rushed in making accusations, he could paint me as a bitter, disgruntled ex-employee trying to smear his name. I had to be meticulous. Late that night, unable to sleep, I walked the house in the dark, thinking of the people who would pay the price if this went unchecked. Rachel in finance, supporting her aging parents. Tom in IT, juggling 2 kids in college. Hundreds of workers whose livelihoods depended on Brightcore staying afloat. This wasn't about revenge. It was about doing what was right. By morning, I had a plan. I gathered every file, server access logs, email trails, system error reports. I organized everything into a secure digital folder, encrypted it, and saved it to multiple locations, an external drive, a cloud account, and 1 copy with clear instructions sent to my personal attorney. I knew one thing. If I was going to expose Nathan, it had to be airtight, undeniable, and backed by evidence no one could bury. As the sun rose over Austin, painting my kitchen in gold, I felt the first stirrings of clarity. Nathan Carter thought he had outplayed me. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. I gave clear instructions to my attorney to release the evidence only if I was somehow silenced or blocked. Then it was time to spring the trap. I knew Nathan's next target. The rollout of the resource management system was scheduled for integration with the new platform in just a few days. If he followed the same pattern, he'd have to sneak and soon to tamper with it. Quietly, I set up a surveillance process to alert me the moment anything suspicious happened. For 3 days, I kept working from my home office, playing the role of the steady consultant, all while waiting for that critical alert. On the 4th night, at precisely 11:23 p.m., my phone buzzed. The message I'd been waiting for flashed on my screen. Unauthorized access detected. Live feed activated. I pulled up the security camera I had quietly gained access to through the system's admin controls. There, illuminated by the pale glow of a monitor, was Nathan Carter, hunched over a terminal in Brightcore's server room, fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. I watched, pulse racing, as he methodically introduced errors, deliberate flaws designed to cripple the company's operations once the integration went live. Without wasting a second, I called Mark Bennett, Brightcore's CEO. "Mark, it's Diane," I said without formalities. "You need to get to the office immediately and bring the security team. Nathan's in the server room right now, sabotaging the resource system." Mark didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way. 20 minutes. I quickly forwarded him the live security footage and then called Rachel in finance, who lived near the office. "Rachel, can you swing by the building and stall Nathan? Tell him you need urgent sign-off on the budget review. Just keep him there until Mark arrives." As I waited, I gathered every piece of evidence: access logs, email threads, the video feed, and a written summary of Nathan's connections to NovaEdge and the clients he'd been quietly steering toward our competitor. I bundled it all into one secure report and sent it to Mark, copying the board's general counsel. Just after midnight, Mark called back. His voice was tight with controlled fury. "We've got him. Security has him in custody. The police are on their way." I let out a slow, shaky breath, the tension draining from my body. "Mark," I said evenly, "make sure his laptop and phone are secured immediately. And you need to reach out to every client he's been in touch with. There's no telling how much ground we've lost." "Already in motion," Mark assured me. "Diane, I can't thank you enough. You've saved this company twice over in 1 week." "I just did what I've always done," I murmured. As I ended the call, a strange wave of emotion washed over me. It wasn't the triumphant vindication I'd always imagined. Instead, it was a deep, quiet sadness. 22 years at Brightcore, and it had all come down to this: rescuing the company from a man who'd been there less than a year. And yet, mingled with that sadness was something unfamiliar: freedom. The following morning, I walked into Brightcore's headquarters for the first time since being fired. The security guard at the front desk greeted me warmly, handing me a new visitor badge. "Miss Shaw, it's good to see you again." Mark met me in the lobby, his face lined with exhaustion, but brightened by genuine relief. "Thanks for coming in. The board's waiting, and they've asked you to join. Walking down those familiar hallways felt surreal. Colleagues paused to nod, some quietly thanking me, others shaking their heads in disbelief at the news that had spread like wildfire overnight. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. The executives sat stiffly, papers in hand, eyes flicking up as I entered. Mark motioned me to a seat near the head of the table and began the meeting without small talk. As you're all aware, he began firmly, we have uncovered undeniable proof of internal sabotage. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark said firmly, addressing the board gathered around the long oak table, we have conclusive proof that Nathan Carter intentionally compromised our infrastructure to divert clients to NovaEdge technologies. Law enforcement is involved, and our legal team is preparing to file charges related to corporate espionage. He gestured toward me. Diane has compiled a meticulous report detailing the events, complete with system logs, access records, and communication trails. Without her vigilance, we might never have uncovered this plot. The boardroom fell into a heavy hush as the directors pored over the evidence before them. Finally, the board chair, Eleanor Davis, looked up, her expression both troubled and contrite. Ms. Shaw, Eleanor said, her voice measured, on behalf of the board, I offer our sincere apology. Your dismissal was not just a misstep, it was a grave failure on our part. I met her gaze evenly. It was more than a simple error, I replied, my tone calm but unwavering. It reflected a broader issue, the undervaluing of experience in favor of superficial innovation. Nathan was able to single me out because the organization had already diminished my contributions and isolated my expertise. The room grew still. I could sense they had expected gracious acceptance, maybe even gratitude, not a candid critique of the very culture that had left the company vulnerable. Mark broke the silence. You're absolutely right. And that's why we'd like to offer you the role of Vice President of Systems Integration, reporting directly to me. We need someone who can bridge the gap between our history and our future without losing what works. A small smile tugged at my lips. Thank you, Mark. I'm honored, but I have another path in mind. 3 months later, I stood in Brightcore's reception area, preparing to walk out after my final day as a consultant. The systems were stable, the documentation complete, and the new team, handpicked and trained by me, was ready to carry the torch. The production environment hummed with precision, and the company's largest clients were not only reassured, but strengthening their commitments. Nathan Carter had been arrested, and NovaEdge faced legal consequences as more companies came forward, revealing similar sabotage attempts linked to Nathan's tenure elsewhere. His career was in ruins, his reputation irreparably damaged. As for me, I had declined Brightcore's offer to return in an executive role. Instead, I negotiated a 6-month consulting contract at a premium rate to repair and future-proof their operations. For the first time in years, I had the authority and time to properly document everything I had built and the respect I had long deserved. Mark approached as I gathered my things. Any chance I can talk you into staying full-time? He asked, a hopeful grin on his face. I'm sure, I said with a warm but final nod. You know how to reach me if you hit a rough patch, but the team's solid now. And Shaw Solutions is officially open for business. Brightcore's your first client, I hope? Mark chuckled. First, but not the only one, I confirmed. I've already signed 2 contracts with companies here in Austin. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. It was Emily. Apartment hunting this weekend still happening? I smiled as I texted back, absolutely. Manhattan sounds exciting, doesn't it? 22 years at Brightcore had given me irreplaceable knowledge. The next chapter? That belonged entirely to me, built on my terms, with the respect and compensation I had always earned. Because sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't just proving them wrong, it's using their mistake to build the life you were meant to live. I want to take a moment to speak directly to you. Yes, you, the person watching this right now. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told you were past your prime, I want you to know, I see you. I am you. For over 2 decades, I gave my all to a company, only to be cast aside when a shiny new vision came along. But here's the truth they didn't understand. Experience is irreplaceable, wisdom matters, and loyalty still counts. I'd love for you to share your thoughts and encouragement in the comments. What would you say to someone like me who faced betrayal but stood tall anyway? Have you ever been in my shoes? Your support isn't just for me, it's for everyone out there who's feeling invisible in a world that chases the next big thing. Let's lift each other up. And if you take anything from my journey, let it be this. Never let anyone define your worth. You are not your title, your paycheck, or your office badge. You are your skills, your resilience, your kindness, and your courage. If life pushes you out of one door, don't stand there pounding on it forever. Step back, look around, and realize that sometimes you were meant to build your own door. Please leave a comment below sharing your own experiences, advice, or just a few words of encouragement. Let's turn this space into a place where we remind each other that we're never too old, too late, or too outdated to rise again. You have more power than you realize, and sometimes the best revenge is living a life that makes you proud. Let's keep fighting together.